What if I told you that some of the greatest minds in history, thinkers, inventors, and philosophers, lived in a world where knowledge was so vast, so precious, that it was stored in places so magnificent they became the stuff of legend? Yet these treasures of human understanding didn't just vanish quietly. They were lost in flames, buried under ruins, or simply erased by the passage of time. The Library of Alexandria, one of the most famous, was said to hold nearly 500,000 scrolls, a collection so immense it was considered the sum of all human knowledge. And then it burned, but it wasn't alone. Across the ancient world, libraries rose and fell, taking with them secrets we may never fully uncover. What did these ancient libraries hold? What stories, ideas, or discoveries were lost when their doors closed for the last time? How did their destruction shape the course of human history? These are the questions we're going to explore today. From the scrolls of Alexandria to the clay tablets of Nineveh, we'll uncover the mysteries of these lost repositories of knowledge. We'll piece together what we know and what we can only guess about the wisdom they safeguarded, and we'll consider how their absence still resonates today, shaping the way we think about the past and the future. This is a journey through the echoes of ancient libraries, a quest to understand what was lost and why it still matters. Ancient libraries were far more than just repositories for scrolls and tablets. They were the beating heart of civilizations where knowledge was preserved, shared, and expanded upon. These institutions emerged as early as the 3rd millennium BC, with the first known libraries appearing in Mesopotamia. Picture the bustling city-states of Sumer, where scribes meticulously inscribed cuneiform onto clay tablets, recording everything from trade transactions to epic tales like the Epic of Gilgamesh. These early collections were practical, serving as archives for administrative and religious texts, but they also laid the groundwork for something far greater. As time progressed, the concept of the library evolved. By the Hellenistic era, libraries had transformed into grand centers of intellectual ambition. The Library of Alexandria, perhaps the most famous of them all, became a beacon of learning, drawing scholars from across the Mediterranean world. It wasn't just about storing books. These libraries were vibrant hubs of scholarship where philosophers debated, scientists experimented, and poets recited their works. They were places where knowledge transcended borders, fostering cultural exchange and innovation. But ancient libraries weren't just about preserving knowledge, they were also symbols of power. Rulers like Ptolemy I of Egypt understood that a great library could elevate a city's prestige and influence. By amassing vast collections of texts, they demonstrated their commitment to wisdom and progress, solidifying their legacy as enlightened leaders. These libraries safeguarded works on philosophy, astronomy, medicine, and literature, ensuring that the intellectual achievements of one generation could inspire the next. What's fascinating is the sheer diversity of knowledge these libraries held. From treatises on mathematics and astronomy to medical manuals and epic poetry, they were a testament to humanity's insatiable curiosity. And as we'll soon explore, the contents of these libraries reveal just how much we've inherited from the ancient world and how much has been lost to time. The Library of Alexandria stands as one of the most legendary institutions in human history, a symbol of intellectual ambition and a testament to the power of collective knowledge. Founded by Ptolemy I in the 3rd century BC, this monumental library was designed to gather and preserve the world's wisdom under one roof. Its location in Alexandria, Egypt, a bustling crossroads of cultures, made it the perfect center for scholars, philosophers, and scientists from across the ancient world. At its peak, the library was said to house an astonishing collection of scrolls, with estimates ranging from 400,000 to 700,000. These weren't just books, they were the accumulated knowledge of civilizations, from Greek philosophy and Egyptian astronomy to Persian mathematics and Indian medicine. Imagine walking into a vast hall where every scroll represented a piece of human thought, a fragment of discovery, or a story waiting to be told. This was no ordinary library. It was a living, breathing hub of innovation and learning. It's no wonder that some of the greatest minds of antiquity were drawn to Alexandria. Figures like Euclid, the father of geometry, and Archimedes, the brilliant mathematician and inventor, walked its halls, exchanging ideas and pushing the boundaries of human understanding. The library wasn't just a place to store knowledge, it was a forge for new ideas, a space where the brightest thinkers of the age could collaborate and inspire one another. But the story of the Library of Alexandria is also one of loss. The exact details of its destruction remain shrouded in mystery, with multiple theories competing for the truth. Some point to Julius Caesar's involvement in a fire during his campaign in 48 BCE, which may have destroyed part of the library's collection. Others suggest that later invasions, such as the Roman conquest or the Muslim expansion in the 7th century, played a role in its ultimate demise. Regardless of the cause, the loss of the library represents one of history's greatest tragedies, a disappearance of knowledge so vast that we can only speculate on what might have been lost. What works vanished with the library? Think of the plays of Sophocles or the scientific treatises of Aristotle, texts that could have reshaped our understanding of the ancient world. What secrets of the cosmos, what forgotten philosophies, what untold stories might have been preserved within those walls? The Library of Alexandria wasn't just a collection of scrolls, it was a treasure chest of humanity's shared heritage, and its loss leaves us with an enduring question. How much more could we have known if it had survived? The Library of Alexandria wasn't just a collection of scrolls and books. It was a treasure trove of human thought, a beacon of knowledge that drew scholars from across the ancient world. Think about it, within its walls, some of the greatest minds in history gathered to study, debate, and preserve the intellectual achievements of their time. What kinds of knowledge might have filled those shelves? Astronomy was a major focus, with texts detailing the movements of stars and planets, perhaps even theories that predated our modern understanding of the cosmos. Mathematicians like Euclid and Archimedes likely had their groundbreaking work stored there, shaping the foundations of geometry and calculus. Medicine, too, was a key area of study, with writings on anatomy, surgery, and herbal remedies that could have advanced medical science centuries ahead of their time. And then there was philosophy, lost works by Aristotle, dialogues by Plato, and treatises by thinkers whose names have been forgotten, all potentially lost to history when the library was destroyed. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. What if the Library of Alexandria held knowledge far beyond what we've imagined? Could there have been advanced scientific theories, technologies, or historical records that, if preserved, might have reshaped our understanding of the ancient world? Imagine the possibilities: blueprints for early machines, detailed accounts of ancient civilizations, or even philosophical ideas so revolutionary they were ahead of their time. The loss of such knowledge is staggering to contemplate, and yet the Library of Alexandria wasn't alone in its mission to preserve humanity's intellectual legacy. Across the ancient world, other great libraries flourished, each holding its own unique treasures. From the Royal Library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh to the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, these institutions were more than just repositories of books. They were the keepers of stories, ideas, and discoveries that connected cultures across centuries. What might they have held that we'll never know? The answers may be lost to time, but the mystery keeps us searching. Long before the great libraries of Alexandria or Pergamum, there existed a treasure trove of knowledge in the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, the Royal Library of Ashurbanipal. Built in the 7th century BCE in the city of Nineveh, this library was unlike anything the world had seen before. It wasn't just a collection of texts, it was a meticulously organized archive, a testament to humanity's early desire to preserve and systematize knowledge. At its core, the library housed tens of thousands of cuneiform tablets, each one carefully inscribed with the stories, laws, and wisdom of the ancient world. Among its most famous holdings was the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest surviving works of literature, but the library's scope went far beyond storytelling. It included texts on law codes, religious rituals, medical practices, and even astronomical observations, proof that the Assyrians were not only warriors but also scholars who sought to understand the world around them. What truly set Ashurbanipal's library apart was its organization. The tablets were catalogued and stored systematically, often with labels indicating their contents. This level of order was groundbreaking for its time and laid the foundation for how future libraries would operate. It wasn't just a repository of knowledge, it was a model for how knowledge could be accessed and shared. When archaeologists uncovered the ruins of the library in the mid-19th century, it was a revelation. Suddenly, the world had access to an entire civilization's thoughts, beliefs, and discoveries. These findings transformed our understanding of ancient Mesopotamia, revealing a society that valued intellectual pursuits as much as military conquest. But Ashurbanipal's library wasn't an isolated phenomenon. Across the ancient world, from Egypt to China, cultures recognized the importance of preserving knowledge. Whether through stone carvings, scrolls, or tablets, they understood that recording their wisdom was the key to ensuring it endured for future generations. And as we'll see, this universal drive to safeguard knowledge would shape the development of libraries for centuries to come. Ancient Chinese libraries were more than just repositories of knowledge. They were the lifeblood of a civilization that valued wisdom as much as power. At the heart of this intellectual tradition were the imperial libraries of the Han Dynasty, which flourished over 2,000 years ago. These libraries were not just buildings filled with scrolls. They were vibrant centers of learning where scholars gathered to study, debate, and preserve the ideas that shaped Chinese culture. The collections they housed were meticulously crafted, often written on bamboo scrolls or silk manuscripts, materials chosen for their durability and elegance. Among the treasures stored in these libraries were works of Confucian philosophy, which laid the ethical and moral foundation for Chinese society. Texts on medicine offered insights into ancient healing practices, some of which are still relevant today. Military strategy scrolls provided guidance to generals and leaders, blending philosophy with practical tactics. These libraries weren't just about storing knowledge. They were about ensuring it could be passed down through generations, even during times of war, rebellion, and dynastic change. What's remarkable is how these libraries became a kind of Silk Road of knowledge, not just for China but for the wider world. Scholars from neighboring regions would travel to study these texts, bringing ideas back to their own lands. This exchange of knowledge mirrored the trade routes that connected East and West, showing how libraries could serve as bridges between cultures. As we reflect on the role of these ancient Chinese libraries, it's impossible not to draw parallels to the libraries of the Islamic Golden Age, a time when scholars in Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba were also preserving and expanding humanity's understanding of the world. Both traditions remind us of the enduring power of libraries to safeguard knowledge, even in the face of chaos and uncertainty. Picture this, a bustling hub of scholars, philosophers, and scientists, all gathered under one roof in the heart of Baghdad. This was the House of Wisdom, or Beit al-Hikmah, a beacon of intellectual activity during the Islamic Golden Age, which spanned from the 8th to the 13th centuries. Established during the reign of the Abbasid Caliphate, this extraordinary institution wasn't just a library, it was a vibrant center of learning, innovation, and cultural exchange. Here, scholars from diverse backgrounds worked together to translate, preserve, and expand upon the knowledge of ancient civilizations, including Greek, Persian, and Indian texts. These translations didn't just sit on shelves, they became the foundation for groundbreaking advancements in fields like mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. One of the House of Wisdom's most remarkable achievements was its role in safeguarding the works of thinkers like Aristotle, Ptolemy, and Euclid. Without the efforts of its translators, many of these texts might have been lost to history. But the House of Wisdom didn't stop at preservation, it sparked innovation. Take, for example, the work of mathematician Al-Khwarizmi, whose groundbreaking contributions to algebra laid the groundwork for modern mathematics. Or consider the advancements in medicine by figures like Al-Razi, whose meticulous observations and writings influenced medical practices for centuries. The House of Wisdom was more than a repository of knowledge. It was a living, breathing engine of progress. Yet, as we marvel at its achievements, it's impossible not to reflect on what was lost. The destruction of the House of Wisdom during the Mongol invasion of Baghdad in the 13th century was a devastating blow to humanity's collective knowledge. Countless manuscripts were destroyed, and while some works survived through copies or translations, much of the wisdom housed within its walls was irretrievably lost. This raises a haunting question: how different might the course of history have been if this intellectual hub had endured? The loss of such libraries reminds us of the fragility of knowledge and the importance of preserving it for future generations. As we move forward, let's explore how the disappearance of institutions like the House of Wisdom disrupted the flow of knowledge, and what lessons we can learn from their legacy. The House of Wisdom, a beacon of learning and intellectual exchange in Baghdad, stood as one of the greatest libraries of the ancient world. But in the year 1258, this sanctuary of knowledge faced a catastrophic end during the Mongol invasion. As the armies of Hulagu Khan swept through the city, the House of Wisdom, along with its vast collection of manuscripts, was reduced to ashes. It's said that the Tigris River ran black with the ink of countless books, a haunting image that symbolizes the sheer scale of this cultural devastation. This wasn't just the destruction of a building, it was the erasure of centuries of scientific, philosophical, and literary achievements. The loss was immeasurable. Scholars from across the Islamic world had contributed to this repository, translating Greek, Persian, and Indian texts into Arabic, and advancing fields like mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. Works by luminaries such as Al-Khwarizmi, whose foundational work in algebra shaped modern mathematics, and the medical treatises of Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, were among the treasures lost. The destruction of the House of Wisdom didn't just set back Islamic scholarship, it severed a vital link in the chain of human progress, leaving gaps in our understanding of the ancient world that we're still trying to fill today. This event serves as a stark reminder of how fragile knowledge can be. It's not just the physical books that are lost, but the ideas, innovations, and connections they represent. The House of Wisdom's fate was tragically not unique. Across history, countless libraries have faced similar destruction, whether by fire, war, or neglect. The Library of Alexandria, for instance, met a comparable end, its vast collection of scrolls lost to time. These losses remind us that preserving knowledge isn't just about safeguarding books, it's about protecting the collective wisdom of humanity. And yet, even in the face of such destruction, there's a glimmer of hope. The story of the House of Wisdom and libraries like it inspires us to value and preserve the knowledge we have today. After all, every book, every manuscript, every scroll is a piece of the puzzle that helps us understand who we are and where we came from. Nestled in the ancient city of Pergamum, now modern-day Bergama in Turkey, stood a library that rivaled even the legendary Library of Alexandria. The Library of Pergamum was more than just a repository of scrolls. It was a beacon of knowledge, a hub for scholars, and a testament to the intellectual fervor of the ancient world. Founded in the 3rd century BCE under the Attalid dynasty, this library quickly became a formidable competitor to Alexandria, not just in size but in influence. Its very existence speaks to a time when the pursuit of knowledge was a race, a friendly but fierce competition that pushed humanity forward. At the heart of this rivalry was an innovation that would change the course of written history: parchment. While Alexandria relied on papyrus, Pergamum turned to animal skins, creating a more durable and versatile writing material. This shift wasn't just practical, it was symbolic. Pergamum's use of parchment showcased its ingenuity and its determination to carve out a unique identity in the world of scholarship. The library's collection was vast, housing works on philosophy, science, and literature that attracted thinkers from across the Mediterranean. It wasn't just a place to store knowledge, it was a place to create it. But what truly set Pergamum apart was its spirit of competition. The rivalry with Alexandria wasn't just about which library had more scrolls, it was about which institution could push the boundaries of human understanding further. Scholars flocked to both centers, drawn by the promise of discovery and the thrill of intellectual debate. This competition, far from being divisive, became a driving force for progress. It fueled advancements in astronomy, medicine, and philosophy, as each library sought to outshine the other. The Library of Pergamum reminds us that knowledge thrives in the presence of challenge. Its story is one of innovation, ambition, and the unyielding human desire to learn. And as we consider the legacy of these ancient libraries, we're left to wonder, what might they have achieved together had their rivalry not been cut short by the tides of history? Their competition, though fierce, was a testament to the power of collaboration through opposition, a lesson that still resonates today. The ancient Maya civilization, with its towering pyramids and sprawling cities hidden deep within the jungles of Mesoamerica, was a beacon of intellectual achievement. Among their most remarkable treasures were their library's collections of bark paper codices filled with intricate glyphs and vivid illustrations. These weren't just books, they were repositories of cosmic knowledge, capturing the Mayas' profound understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and time itself. Imagine holding a codex that mapped the movements of Venus with astonishing precision, or one that contained the secrets of their complex calendar systems, which could predict celestial events centuries in advance. This was knowledge that connected the heavens to the earth, blending science, spirituality, and art in ways that still leave scholars in awe. But here's the heartbreaking truth: most of these codices were lost forever. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century, they saw these texts not as treasures but as threats, works of what they called devilish superstition. In a devastating act of cultural erasure, countless codices were burned, their wisdom turned to ash. Only 4 survive today, fragments of a once vast library that held the collective memory of an entire civilization. These surviving codices, like the Dresden Codex, offer glimpses into the Mayas' mastery of astronomy and their ability to calculate lunar cycles and eclipses with incredible accuracy. Yet, they are just a whisper of what was lost. The destruction of the Maya libraries wasn't just a loss of books, it was the erasure of a worldview. These codices didn't just record data, they told stories, preserved rituals, and encoded the very identity of the Maya people. Their loss is a stark reminder of how quickly entire histories can vanish, leaving behind only fragments to piece together. And this wasn't an isolated tragedy. Across the Americas, from the Aztecs to the Inca, the burning of indigenous libraries was a deliberate attempt to dismantle cultures and assert dominance. These acts didn't just destroy books, they severed connections to the past, silencing voices that might have reshaped our understanding of history. What might we have learned if these libraries had survived? How much deeper could our knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and human ingenuity be? The Maya codices are a haunting reminder of what was lost and a call to preserve what remains of the world's ancient wisdom. In the heart of the Byzantine Empire, the Library of Constantinople stood as a beacon of intellectual preservation during a time when much of the Western world had plunged into the so-called Dark Ages. While Europe grappled with instability, this library became a sanctuary for the wisdom of the ancient world. Its mission was clear: to safeguard the works of Greek and Roman thinkers, ensuring that their ideas would not be lost to the ravages of time. The library's scholars were relentless in their efforts to copy and catalogue countless manuscripts, from the philosophical treatises of Aristotle to the epic poems of Homer. Imagine the painstaking process: scribes hunched over parchment, carefully transcribing every word by hand, often under the dim light of oil lamps. These copies weren't just duplicates, they were lifelines, ensuring that the knowledge of antiquity could survive wars, fires, and the slow decay of papyrus and parchment. But the Library of Constantinople wasn't just a storage house for old texts. It was a vibrant center of learning where scholars gathered to debate, interpret, and expand upon the ideas of the past. In many ways, it served as a bridge between the ancient and medieval worlds, keeping the flame of classical knowledge alive during centuries when much of Europe had turned away from it. Yet, its story takes a dramatic turn in the year 1453, when the armies of the Ottoman Empire breached the walls of Constantinople. The fall of the city marked not only the end of the Byzantine Empire, but also a pivotal moment for the library and its treasures. Many manuscripts were lost, destroyed, or scattered across the world. But even in its destruction, the library's legacy endured. Some of its texts found their way to Italy, where they ignited the intellectual fervor of the Renaissance, inspiring figures like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. So, while the Library of Constantinople may no longer stand, its impact on the preservation of knowledge is immeasurable. It reminds us that even in times of turmoil, the written word has the power to transcend empires and shape the course of history. Deep in the heart of ancient India, surrounded by lush greenery and the hum of scholarly pursuit, stood the Library of Nalanda, a beacon of knowledge and one of the most revered centers of learning in the world. Established around the 5th century, Nalanda wasn't just a library. It was a sprawling university, a sanctuary for scholars, monks, and students from across Asia. Its shelves were lined with tens of thousands of manuscripts, each one a treasure trove of wisdom on philosophy, medicine, astronomy, and the intricate teachings of Buddhism. Imagine walking through its halls where the air was thick with the scent of parchment and the whispers of debates that shaped centuries of thought. But Nalanda's story takes a tragic turn. In the 12th century, the library and its university fell victim to an invasion led by Bakhtiar Khilji, a military commander whose forces set fire to the institution. The flames consumed not just the buildings but centuries of accumulated knowledge texts that contained insights into the human condition, advanced medical practices, and even early astronomical discoveries. The loss was catastrophic. Entire works on Buddhist philosophy, which had been meticulously copied and preserved over generations, were reduced to ash. Scholars fled, taking what fragments of knowledge they could carry, but much of Nalanda's legacy was lost forever. What makes this destruction so heartbreaking is the recurring pattern it represents. Libraries, as storehouses of knowledge, have often been targets during times of conflict. They are seen not just as physical structures, but as symbols of a culture's identity and intellectual power. The burning of Nalanda wasn't just an act of violence against a building. It was an assault on the collective memory and wisdom of an entire civilization. This brings us to a sobering question. Why are libraries so often caught in the crossfire? Perhaps it's because they hold the keys to understanding, not just of the past, but of who we are and who we might become. When a library is destroyed, it's not just books that are lost. It's the voices of generations, the ideas that could have shaped futures, and the connections to our shared humanity. The story of Nalanda reminds us that the preservation of knowledge is not just an academic pursuit, it's a vital act of safeguarding our world's cultural heritage. In the shadow of Europe's medieval turmoil, monasteries emerged as unlikely guardians of knowledge. While the outside world was gripped by war, famine, and political instability, these quiet enclaves became sanctuaries for the written word. Within their walls, monks toiled endlessly, not just in prayer, but in the meticulous work of copying and preserving ancient texts. Imagine the flicker of candlelight in a dimly lit scriptorium, where a monk, hunched over parchment, painstakingly transcribed works by Plato, Aristotle, and other giants of antiquity. These men weren't merely scribes, they were the unsung heroes who saved countless works from being lost to time. The task was far from easy. Manuscripts were rare and fragile, often written on materials like papyrus or vellum, which required careful handling. Copying a single book could take months, even years, as monks worked with quill and ink, letter by letter, line by line. Mistakes were costly and every detail mattered. But why did they do it? For many, it was an act of devotion, a belief that preserving these works was a sacred duty, a way to honor both God and the wisdom of the past. And so, through their dedication, the ideas of ancient philosophers, scientists, and historians survived, even as the world around them crumbled. One of the most remarkable aspects of this effort was its scale. Monasteries across Europe, from the windswept cliffs of Ireland to the rolling hills of Italy, became hubs of intellectual activity. Figures like Alcuin of York, a scholar monk who served under Charlemagne, played a pivotal role in organizing scriptoria and standardizing scripts to make texts more legible and accessible. These efforts didn't just preserve knowledge, they laid the groundwork for a cultural revival. Centuries later, the very texts these monks copied would find their way into the hands of thinkers like Petrarch and Erasmus, sparking the intellectual fire of the Renaissance. It's a fascinating thought. Without the quiet, determined work of these medieval monks, the Renaissance, the rebirth of art, science, and philosophy might never have happened. Their story reminds us that preserving knowledge isn't just about saving books. It's about safeguarding the ideas that shape civilizations. And as we'll see, their legacy didn't stop at the monastery walls. The seeds they planted would grow into something even more extraordinary. The Renaissance was a period of rebirth in more ways than one. While it's often celebrated for its artistic masterpieces and scientific breakthroughs, one of its most profound transformations came from something far more subtle yet equally revolutionary: the rediscovery of ancient texts. For centuries, much of the knowledge from classical civilizations like Greece and Rome had been lost, forgotten, or scattered across the world. But during the Renaissance, a spark was lit. Scholars, driven by curiosity and a yearning for the wisdom of the past, began to hunt down these ancient manuscripts, piecing together the intellectual heritage of antiquity. At the forefront of this movement was Francesco Petrarch, often called the father of humanism. Petrarch didn't just admire the ancient world, he actively sought out its writings, scouring monasteries and libraries across Europe for forgotten works. His passion for classical literature, philosophy, and history inspired a generation of thinkers to look back to the ancients for guidance. This wasn't just about nostalgia, it was about rediscovering ideas that could reshape the present. Petrarch's efforts laid the groundwork for a cultural shift, one that would redefine how Europeans saw themselves and their place in history. But Petrarch wasn't alone in this quest. The Medici family of Florence, known for their wealth and influence, became key patrons of this intellectual revival. Under their support, scholars and translators worked tirelessly to bring ancient texts back into circulation. The Medici's vast network of connections allowed them to acquire rare manuscripts from across the Mediterranean, while their patronage of artists and thinkers ensured that these ideas didn't just stay on the page. They came to life in the vibrant culture of Renaissance Italy. From the rediscovery of Plato's works to the translation of ancient scientific treatises, the Medici played a pivotal role in bridging the gap between the classical world and the modern age. The impact of these rediscovered texts was profound. In art, they inspired a return to naturalism and humanism, as seen in the works of masters like Michelangelo and Botticelli, who drew heavily on classical themes and techniques. In science, ancient texts by figures like Archimedes and Ptolemy sparked new inquiries, challenging medieval assumptions and paving the way for the scientific revolution. And in philosophy, the revival of thinkers like Plato and Aristotle encouraged a deeper exploration of ethics, politics, and the nature of humanity itself. The Renaissance wasn't just a rebirth of art, it was a rebirth of ideas fueled by the rediscovery of a lost intellectual heritage. Today, the spirit of that Renaissance revival lives on in the work of modern archaeologists and historians. Just as Petrarch and the Medici once uncovered long-forgotten texts, researchers today continue to unearth lost knowledge, from ancient libraries buried under volcanic ash to scrolls preserved in desert sands. Each discovery adds another piece to the puzzle, reminding us that the past still has much to teach us. The Renaissance showed us that the rediscovery of ancient knowledge isn't just about looking back, it's about finding inspiration for the future. And as long as there are mysteries waiting to be solved, that quest for knowledge will never truly end. Imagine walking through the ruins of an ancient city, brushing away centuries of dust, and suddenly stumbling upon a treasure trove of knowledge, scrolls, tablets, and manuscripts that have been silent for thousands of years. This isn't just the stuff of dreams, it's the reality of modern archaeology. Recent discoveries have brought us closer than ever to unlocking the secrets of ancient libraries, offering tantalizing glimpses into the intellectual worlds of the past. One of the most remarkable examples is the Villa of the Papyri in Herculaneum, a Roman town devastated by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in the year 79. Buried under layers of volcanic ash, this villa held an extraordinary collection of carbonized scrolls, preserved in the very moment of their destruction. These fragile, blackened texts are like time capsules waiting to reveal their secrets, but recovering these ancient writings is no simple task. The scrolls from Herculaneum, for instance, are so delicate that unrolling them risks turning them to dust. Archaeologists and scientists have turned to cutting-edge technology, using high-resolution imaging and artificial intelligence to virtually unroll the scrolls without physically touching them. It's a painstaking process, but the potential rewards are immense. Each scroll could contain lost works of philosophy, poetry, or even early scientific theories, pieces of human thought that were thought to be gone forever. The challenges don't end with extraction and preservation, though. Deciphering these texts often requires a combination of linguistic expertise, historical context, and sometimes even a bit of luck. Languages evolve, and scripts that were once common can become indecipherable over time. Yet, every word decoded is a victory, a small step toward reclaiming the lost wisdom of our ancestors. What drives this relentless quest to recover ancient knowledge? Perhaps it's the belief that these libraries hold more than just historical curiosities. They contain the collective memory of humanity. They remind us of where we've been, and in doing so, they might even offer clues about where we're headed. As we continue to unearth these lost libraries, we're not just uncovering the past, we're piecing together the story of who we are. And in a world that often feels fragmented, that story is more important than ever. The Bible, as we know it today, is a collection of sacred texts carefully curated over centuries, but what many don't realize is that it's just a fraction of the writings that once existed. Among the most intriguing are the so-called lost books of the Bible texts like the Book of Jasher, the Book of Enoch, and the Apocrypha. These works, referenced within the Bible itself, have sparked endless curiosity. For instance, the Book of Jasher is mentioned in Joshua and 2 Samuel, yet its full contents remain shrouded in mystery. What could these lost texts have contained? Some scholars believe they held additional stories of prophets, detailed accounts of ancient battles, or even deeper insights into the moral and spiritual teachings of the time. The question of why these books were excluded from the biblical canon is equally fascinating. Early religious leaders faced the monumental task of deciding which texts aligned with their theological vision and which did not. Some writings, like the Apocrypha, were considered valuable but not divinely inspired. Others, like the Book of Enoch, which delves into visions of heaven and apocalyptic prophecies, were deemed too esoteric or controversial. The absence of these texts has left gaps in our understanding of ancient religious thought, shaping how we interpret history and spirituality today. Imagine how different our perspective might be if these lost writings had survived intact. But the Bible isn't the only religious tradition with missing texts. Across cultures and faiths, countless sacred writings have been lost to time, whether through deliberate suppression, natural decay, or sheer neglect. From the early Christian Gospels excluded from the New Testament to the forgotten hymns of ancient Zoroastrianism, these vanished works remind us that history is often shaped by what is preserved and what is lost. What stories, wisdom, or revelations might they have held? As we continue to explore these mysteries, we're not just uncovering fragments of the past, we're piecing together a richer, more complex understanding of humanity's spiritual journey. The pursuit of knowledge has always been a journey of discovery and rediscovery. Among the most fascinating chapters in this story is the legacy of alchemy and early science, fields that were deeply intertwined with the wisdom preserved in ancient libraries. These repositories of knowledge held texts that explored the mysteries of the natural world, blending philosophy, spirituality, and early scientific inquiry. Yet, much of this knowledge was lost to time, leaving gaps in our understanding that would take centuries to fill. Take, for instance, the legendary figure of Hermes Trismegistus, often considered the father of alchemy. His writings, such as the Corpus Hermeticum, were once revered as sacred texts offering insights into the cosmos, the nature of matter, and the relationship between humanity and the divine. These works were meticulously copied and stored in libraries like the Library of Alexandria, where scholars from across the ancient world gathered to study them. But when these libraries were destroyed, whether by fire, war, or neglect, countless manuscripts vanished, taking with them the accumulated wisdom of generations. The loss of these texts had profound consequences. Without access to the ideas of thinkers like Hermes, the progress of science was delayed. Early alchemy, which sought to understand the transformation of matter, was often dismissed as mere superstition in later centuries. Yet, at its core, alchemy was a precursor to modern chemistry, driven by the same curiosity about the building blocks of the universe. The destruction of these libraries meant that many of these foundational ideas had to be rediscovered, a process that took hundreds of years. Interestingly, the influence of figures like Hermes Trismegistus didn't disappear entirely. During the Renaissance, scholars began to rediscover and translate surviving copies of ancient texts, sparking a renewed interest in alchemy and early science. Thinkers like Isaac Newton were deeply influenced by these works, seeing in them not just mystical speculation but a framework for understanding the natural world. Newton himself spent years studying alchemical manuscripts, believing they held clues to the workings of the universe. Today, modern science is beginning to revisit some of these ancient ideas with fresh eyes. Concepts once dismissed as purely symbolic, such as the alchemical pursuit of transformation, are finding new relevance in fields like materials science and quantum physics. The idea that everything is interconnected, a central theme in Hermetic philosophy, resonates with our growing understanding of systems theory and ecology. In a way, we are witnessing a fascinating convergence of ancient wisdom and cutting-edge science, a reminder that the past still has much to teach us. This ongoing dialogue between the old and the new invites us to reflect on the value of preserving knowledge. What other insights might we uncover if more ancient texts had survived? And how might the rediscovery of lost wisdom continue to shape our future? Throughout history, the destruction of libraries has been more than just an act of vandalism. It has been a deliberate tool of power, wielded to suppress knowledge and control populations. When books burn, ideas vanish, and with them, the voices of dissent, innovation, and progress. This isn't just about the loss of physical objects. It's about the erasure of collective memory and the silencing of perspectives that challenge authority. Take, for example, the infamous burning of the Library of Alexandria, a beacon of knowledge in the ancient world. Its destruction, whether gradual or sudden, symbolizes one of the most catastrophic losses of human understanding. Scholars still debate the extent of what was lost, but what's clear is that the absence of its texts left gaps in fields ranging from astronomy to philosophy, setting back progress for generations. Fast forward to more recent history, and you'll find equally chilling examples. During the rise of authoritarian regimes in the 20th century, book burnings became a grotesque spectacle of control. In Nazi Germany, works by Jewish authors, intellectuals, and political dissidents were systematically destroyed, a chilling prelude to the broader atrocities that followed. These acts weren't just about censorship, they were about rewriting history and shaping a narrative that served those in power. But why target libraries? Because knowledge is power, and those who control it can shape the future. By destroying libraries, authoritarian regimes ensure that only their version of the truth remains. It's a way to stifle curiosity, discourage critical thinking, and maintain a grip on society. The implications are profound. Without access to diverse ideas, freedom of thought and expression withers. People become easier to manipulate, and the cycle of oppression tightens. Yet, this isn't just a relic of the past. Even today, libraries face threats both subtle and overt. In some parts of the world, censorship and book bans are on the rise, targeting works that challenge societal norms or political agendas. Digital libraries and archives aren't immune either, as cyber attacks and misinformation campaigns seek to destabilize the very foundations of shared knowledge. The struggle to preserve libraries, whether physical or virtual, is a fight to protect the diversity of thought and the freedom to explore it. So, what does this mean for us? It's a reminder that libraries are more than buildings filled with books. They are guardians of our collective wisdom, standing as bulwarks against ignorance and tyranny. Their survival is intertwined with our own, and their stories, both lost and preserved, hold the key to understanding not just where we've been, but where we're headed. Imagine a world where the sum of human knowledge is just a click away. In many ways, that's the reality we live in today, with digital repositories like the Internet Archive serving as modern-day versions of the ancient Library of Alexandria. These platforms promise to preserve and share the collective wisdom of humanity, much like their ancient counterparts aimed to do. But how do they compare, and what can the past teach us about safeguarding knowledge in the digital age? The Library of Alexandria was more than just a collection of scrolls. It was a symbol of humanity's thirst for understanding, a place where scholars from across the ancient world gathered to share ideas. Today, the Internet Archive and similar platforms strive to fulfill a similar mission, offering free access to millions of books, films, software, and even entire websites. The scale is staggering. Where ancient libraries could house thousands of scrolls, digital archives can store billions of pages, accessible to anyone with an internet connection. But with this vast potential comes significant challenges. Unlike physical scrolls, which could survive for centuries if properly cared for, digital data is fragile. File formats become obsolete, servers crash, and cybersecurity threats loom large. A single hack or technical failure could erase entire collections in an instant. And while the Library of Alexandria was lost to fire, the dangers facing digital archives are more insidious, ranging from censorship to corporate control over access. Yet, technology also offers unprecedented opportunities. Digitization allows us to preserve fragile texts without risking the originals, and artificial intelligence can help catalog and analyze vast amounts of information in ways ancient librarians could only dream of. The challenge lies in balancing accessibility with preservation, ensuring that future generations can access this wealth of knowledge without compromising its integrity. What can we learn from the ancient libraries that came before us? For one, they remind us that knowledge is a shared responsibility. The Library of Alexandria was a collaborative effort, drawing on contributions from across the ancient world. Similarly, modern digital archives rely on the collective efforts of volunteers, donors, and technologists. But they also teach us the importance of redundancy, storing knowledge in multiple formats and locations to safeguard against loss. As we navigate the digital age, the lessons of the past are more relevant than ever. The ancient Library of Alexandria may be lost to history, but its spirit lives on in the digital repositories we're building today. The question is, will we rise to the challenge of preserving this new library for the ages, or will it too become a cautionary tale? The answer lies in how we choose to value, protect, and share the knowledge we've inherited, and the knowledge we're creating every day. The question of who decides what knowledge is preserved and what is lost is one that has echoed through the ages, shaping the way we understand history and culture. Think about it. Libraries and archives hold the collective memory of humanity, but they're not neutral spaces. Behind every scroll, manuscript, or book that survives, there's a story of selection, often influenced by the biases, priorities, and values of those in power. Take, for example, the Library of Alexandria, often hailed as one of the greatest repositories of ancient wisdom. While it's remembered for its vast collection, we rarely ask who decided what was worthy of being stored there. What voices were excluded? The truth is, those decisions were often tied to the political and cultural agendas of the time. Texts that challenged the status quo or represented marginalized perspectives might have been deemed less important or, worse, intentionally destroyed. This raises a profound ethical dilemma. If the preservation of knowledge is shaped by human judgment, how do we ensure that diverse voices aren't silenced? Today, this question is more pressing than ever. In the digital age, we have the capacity to store more information than ever before, but that doesn't guarantee fairness or inclusivity. Algorithms, funding, and institutional priorities still play a role in determining what gets saved and what fades into obscurity. Consider the responsibility we have as modern societies. Are we preserving knowledge in a way that reflects the full spectrum of human experience? Or are we, perhaps unintentionally, perpetuating the same biases of the past? The stakes are high. Every text that disappears takes with it a piece of our shared story, a perspective that could have enriched our understanding of the world. But this isn't just a question for governments or institutions. It's also a call to action for individuals. Each of us has a role to play in safeguarding knowledge, whether it's through supporting libraries, digitizing rare texts, or simply sharing stories that might otherwise be forgotten. After all, the preservation of knowledge isn't just about the past, it's about ensuring that future generations have access to the full breadth of human thought and creativity. The story of the lost libraries of the Americas is a profound and heartbreaking chapter in human history. Across the continents, indigenous civilizations like the Maya, Aztec, and Inca built vast repositories of knowledge, recording their understanding of the world in codices, oral traditions, and intricate systems of memory. These libraries weren't just collections of books, they were living archives of wisdom, holding secrets to advanced medicine, celestial navigation, and the spiritual heart of their cultures. But with the arrival of European colonizers, much of this knowledge was systematically destroyed. Codices were burned, temples were razed, and oral traditions were silenced. The result, a catastrophic loss of knowledge that still echoes today. Imagine the treasures that were lost. The Maya, for instance, had codices filled with astronomical observations so precise they could predict solar eclipses centuries in advance. Their understanding of herbal medicine was unparalleled, with remedies for ailments that modern science is only now beginning to rediscover. The Aztecs, too, had libraries brimming with knowledge about agriculture, architecture, and even psychology. And the Inca, though they lacked a written language, relied on quipus, complex knotted cords to record everything from census data to historical events. These were not primitive societies, they were sophisticated civilizations with deep intellectual traditions. Yet much of their wisdom was obliterated, leaving us with only fragments of what once was. But the loss wasn't just about practical knowledge, it was a blow to cultural identity. Libraries are more than storage spaces for information, they are the soul of a people. They hold the stories, the myths, the rituals, and the values that define a culture. When these libraries were destroyed, entire ways of life were erased. Generations of indigenous peoples were severed from their heritage, forced to navigate a world where their history had been rewritten or erased entirely. The impact of this loss is still felt today, as many indigenous communities struggle to reclaim and preserve what little remains of their ancestral knowledge. Thankfully, efforts are underway to reverse this damage. Indigenous scholars, historians, and activists are working tirelessly to piece together the fragments of their past. Oral traditions, once dismissed as unreliable, are now being recognized as vital sources of knowledge. Projects to digitize surviving codices and quipus are helping to preserve what little remains. And there's a growing movement to teach indigenous languages and traditions in schools, ensuring that this knowledge is passed on to future generations. These efforts are not just about reclaiming the past, they're about rebuilding a sense of identity and pride. Yet, the destruction of these libraries serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of knowledge. When a library is lost, it's not just books that disappear, it's an entire worldview. The stories, the wisdom, the collective memory of a people can vanish in an instant. And as we reflect on this loss, it's impossible not to wonder, what other treasures of human knowledge have been lost to time? What could we have learned from these ancient libraries if they had survived? The answers may be lost to history, but the questions remind us of the importance of preserving the knowledge we have today, not just for ourselves, but for the generations to come. Myth and legend have always been intertwined with the pursuit of knowledge, especially when it comes to the mysteries of ancient libraries. Take, for example, the legendary lost city of Atlantis. For centuries, stories of this advanced civilization have sparked the imagination of scholars, explorers, and dreamers alike. According to Plato, Atlantis was a utopia of unparalleled wisdom, boasting grand libraries filled with the collective knowledge of a bygone era. But when the island sank into the ocean, so too did its treasures lost to time, leaving behind only whispers of what might have been. This tantalizing blend of fact and fiction has fueled countless theories about the existence of ancient repositories of knowledge hidden away, waiting to be rediscovered. What's fascinating is how these stories blur the line between history and imagination. Myths like Atlantis don't just entertain, they shape our understanding of the past. They remind us that history is often a mosaic of truths, half-truths, and outright fables. And while we may never find the physical remnants of Atlantis or its libraries, the legend itself has inspired generations to search for other lost treasures. It's as if the idea of a forgotten archive brimming with secrets speaks to something deep within us, a yearning to uncover the wisdom of our ancestors and connect with the mysteries of the human experience. This intersection of myth and history also raises an intriguing question. Could there be a kernel of truth hidden within these tales? Many myths are thought to be rooted in real events, exaggerated over time through retellings. Perhaps the story of Atlantis is a distant echo of an ancient civilization that truly did possess remarkable knowledge that was lost in a cataclysm, leaving only fragments behind. Whether or not these legends are based in fact, they serve as a powerful reminder of how stories can drive exploration and discovery. They keep the flame of curiosity alive, urging us to look beyond what we know and imagine what might still be out there, waiting to be found. The allure of these ancient mysteries is timeless. They captivate us not just because of what they might reveal about the past, but because they tap into our collective desire to solve the unsolvable. From the Library of Alexandria to the rumored archives of the Silk Road, the search for lost libraries is as much about the journey as it is about the destination. Every myth, every legend, every whispered tale of hidden knowledge adds another layer to the puzzle, keeping the quest alive across generations. And perhaps that's the real magic of these stories. They remind us that the pursuit of knowledge is never truly over. As we stand on the shoulders of modern technology, the question arises, can we ever truly recover the lost knowledge of ancient libraries? The answer, while not straightforward, is filled with hope and possibility. Advances in artificial intelligence and cutting-edge imaging techniques are opening doors we once thought were sealed forever. For instance, researchers are now using AI to decode ancient scripts that have baffled historians for centuries. One remarkable project involves analyzing the Herculaneum Scrolls, ancient texts carbonized by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. Through a combination of high-resolution scanning and machine learning, scientists are beginning to unravel their secrets letter by letter. It's like piecing together a puzzle that's been buried for millennia, but it's not just about deciphering what's already been found. Advanced imaging technologies are also allowing us to read texts that were once considered unreadable. Imagine being able to scan a fragile, crumbling manuscript without ever touching it, revealing layers of ink and parchment hidden beneath the surface. Projects like this are underway across the globe, from the Vatican Library to the ruins of Mesopotamia, each one a step closer to reclaiming fragments of our shared human story. Yet, even with these incredible tools, there are limits to what we can recover. Some knowledge lost to time may never be fully understood. Fires, wars, and the slow decay of materials have erased entire libraries, leaving only whispers of what once was. And even when we do recover fragments, interpretation is key. A single word or phrase can be debated for years, reminding us that the past is always filtered through the lens of the present. What's clear, though, is that the pursuit of lost knowledge is more than just an academic exercise. It's a journey that connects us to the dreams, ideas, and struggles of those who came before us. From the wisdom of the Library of Alexandria to the mysteries of the Silk Road's forgotten texts, These ancient libraries were more than just repositories. They were the heartbeat of human curiosity and innovation. As we look to the future, one thing is certain: the quest to recover lost knowledge is far from over. With every breakthrough, we're reminded of how much we've lost and how much we still have to discover. And while we may never fully reconstruct the past, each step forward brings us closer to understanding the rich tapestry of human history. So, what does the future hold? Perhaps with a blend of technology, determination, and a bit of luck, we might just uncover answers to questions we didn't even know to ask. The story of these ancient libraries isn't just about what was lost, it's about what we can still find.